Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at, well, a pretty complex and sensitive topic. The physiological connection between chronic stress and fertility challenges. It's intricate and, frankly, often quite devastating for those going through it. Our mission, really, for you in this deep dive is to get past this idea that stress is just, a feeling, something in your head. We've got sources here that show chronic pressure is actually a measurable physical barrier to conception. And once we've kind of laid that groundwork, we'll explore a specific complementary solution that's getting more attention.
Yeah.
Acupuncture.
That's exactly right. It's a crucial shift in thinking. Anyone on that path to parenthood knows the emotional strain all too well. But the data, it really points to something deeper. That chronic sort of everyday stress deadlines, money worries, just the sheer amount of information we deal with it causes very real chemical imbalances. And it even, redirects blood flow in ways that fundamentally sabotage your reproductive function.
Okay, let's unpack that. Physical sabotage, not just a mental block. How does the body stress response actually, stop the process of creating life?
It really boils down to the body's priorities. Survival, first and foremost. The core mechanism is that primal fight-or-flight response. When your brain senses a threat, could be anything, a real danger or, say, a huge credit card bill. It just floods the system with cortisol. That's the main stress hormone. Cortisol's job is basically to make sure you survive the immediate situation, the next 5 minutes.
And surviving means pulling resources, energy, oxygen away from anything that isn't essential right now, like, reproduction.
Exactly. Cortisol wants your muscles ready to go, your brain sharp. So to do that, it actively shunts blood flow away from your core reproductive organs. We're talking ovaries, uterus tests. It sends that blood to your limbs, your brain, which leaves the reproductive system starved of vital oxygen and nutrients. It's a state called ischemia.
That lack of blood flow is one thing, but the sources dig even deeper. There's this idea of a chemical conflict, right, at the hormonal command center. It's not just plumbing. It's the actual building blocks.
Yeah, this is where the chemistry gets really insightful. It relates to something people sometimes call the cortisol steal.
Mm-hmm.
Think of your hormones as being built from like a common pool of resources. When chronic stress demands constant, massive cortisol production, well, the body essentially says, okay, cortisol production is priority number one. Everything else takes a back seat.
Right.
So it diverts these crucial hormonal precursors molecules like pregnenolone away from the pathways that would normally use them to make essential sex hormones, like progesterone and estrogen.
Mm.
The body literally chooses survival, which is cortisol, over procreation, which needs those sex hormones.
So the whole system gets hijacked, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the actual communication lines that get messed up. We hear about these axis HPO and HPG. Can you break down for the listener what those are and how cortisol jams the signal?
Absolutely. Think of the axis like a chain of command, a communication highway with 3 key stalks. It starts in the hypothalamus, in the brain. That sends signals to the pituitary gland, also in the brain, and the pituitary then sends instructions down to the ovaries in women or the gonads, the testes, in men.
The command center, basically.
Precisely. Now, in women, chronic stress really disrupts this hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, the HPO axis. When cortisol is high, the hypothalamus gets, confused. It doesn't send the right signals to the pituitary to release FSH, that's follicle-stimulating hormone.
Which develops the egg.
Right, or LH-luteinizing hormone, which is the trigger for ovulation, the egg release. The whole timing just goes haywire.
And similar story for men, but hitting the hormones needed for sperm production.
Correct. The male version is the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, or HPG. Stress effectively slams the brakes on this axis, too. It dramatically stalls the production of healthy testosterone. And since testosterone is absolutely critical for making sperm spermatogenesis, this constant disruption inevitably causes problems with sperm count and quality.
It's really kind of mind-blowing that the body reacts to, say, a tough relationship or money worries with the same hormonal panic as facing, a predator.
Mm-hmm.
And if we connect this out over time, this isn't just a temporary blip, is it? It contributes to actual medical conditions.
That's the really concerning part. This isn't just, I'm stressed this month. This ongoing physiological sabotage, it contributes to complex structural conditions. The research links this chronic disruption to things like polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, in women, which is a major cause of infertility. And in men, specific issues like erectile dysfunction. It often creates this vicious cycle. Stress impacts fertility. Fertility struggles cause more stress. It just keeps feeding itself.
Okay, let's zoom in on the gender-specific impacts. Starting with women. You mentioned cortisol stealing the building blocks for progesterone and estrogen. What does that high cortisol mean for the menstrual cycle specifically?
Well, the interference with estrogen and progesterone is pretty profound because the body's prioritizing cortisol. The levels of these vital sex hormones can drop or they just become really unstable. This leads directly to irregular periods. And in more severe cases, ovulation might be delayed or it might not happen at all. That's called an ovulation. And obviously, if there's no egg, conception can't happen.
And even if an egg is released, the timing afterwards, that luteal phase, is super critical for implantation, isn't it?
Absolutely critical, yes.
Yeah.
The research really highlights that stress often shortens the luteal phase. Now, the luteal phase is that time after ovulation when the uterus lining needs enough progesterone, the very hormone often depleted by that cortisol steal, to get ready and sustain itself for a potential pregnancy. If that window is too short, implantation just can't happen properly, and the risk of early pregnancy loss goes up.
Wow. So it seems like pretty much every step for women is vulnerable to this hormonal hijack. And what about for those using IVF or other assisted technologies? The stress must be immense then.
Oh, absolutely. The stakes feel incredibly high. And multiple studies show that high stress and anxiety levels in IVF patients significantly reduce the chances of success. We're talking fewer eggs retrieved, lower fertilization rates, and ultimately lower live birth rates. The emotional pressure actually makes the biological problem worse.
It's clear men aren't off the hook either. You mentioned testosterone suppression being the key issue with the HPG axis.
Yeah.
What does that look like in terms of sperm quality? What are the specifics?
We see issues on several fronts. It's not just lower sperm counts, although that definitely happens. The data shows reduced motility.
Meaning how well they swim.
Exactly. Their ability to actually navigate the female reproductive tract effectively. And crucially, we also see more DNA fragmentation within the sperm cells.
So the genetic material itself is damaged.
That's right. The DNA inside the sperm is more likely to be broken or compromised.
So, okay, the sperm might be there, but maybe fewer of them. They're not strong swimmers, and they could be carrying damaged genetic code, all because of this high-stress environment.
Precisely. And study after study links these high-stress situations, whether it's work stress, general lifestyle, or even the stress of the fertility journey itself, to these specific poor semen parameters. The message the male reproductive system is getting is basically, now is not the time. Don't invest energy in making future generations.
Okay, this paints a pretty stark picture. Stress isn't just mental, it's deeply physiological. Which brings us to a really crucial point: solutions. If chronic stress is such a huge problem, we need things that actually interrupt that stress response at a physical level. Acupuncture comes up a lot. But, for someone focused on hard medical data, maybe IVF success rates, there might be skepticism. Is this just like glorified relaxation? What's the actual chemical mechanism? Does acupuncture really change those stress hormone levels?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And modern research has been digging into exactly that. The answer goes way beyond just feeling calm, though that's part of it. Acupuncture seems to act as a specific neurological intervention. When those fine needles stimulate certain points on the body, it actually helps regulate the nervous system. Specifically, it helps calm down the sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight system, and activate the parasympathetic system, which is rest and digest.
Well,
This stimulation seems to directly curb cortisol production. It acts like a brake on that stress hormone release. And at the same time, the treatment encourages the release of endorphins. Those are your body's natural mood boosters, kind of like natural opioids.
so it's like hitting the brakes on the stress chemicals and the gas on the feel-good ones.
That's a great way to put it. And the result is measurable hormonal rebalancing. You actually see it manifest physically. More regular cycles in women because that HPO axis gets stabilized. Better sperm vitality in men. And let's not forget the blood flow point we made earlier.
Right, the deprivation.
Acupuncture seems to significantly improve blood circulation back to the pelvic region, to those reproductive organs, helping to reverse the effects of that cortisol-induced starvation, if you will.
That's huge. Reversing the blood flow issue creates a much better environment, more nurturing, more nutrient-rich. And people do report immediate benefits, right? Less anxiety, sleeping better, just feeling more centered. That seems incredibly important during really high-stakes moments like, say, an embryo transfer.
Absolutely. That improved psychological resilience is valuable in itself. But let's look at the hard data, because Western medicine is increasingly backing this up as a serious therapeutic tool.
Okay, let's pivot to that clinical evidence.
Yeah, the findings are pretty compelling. For example, a 2025 study out of university hospitals provided solid proof that acupuncture significantly cut down stress, pain, and anxiety for IVF patients. And the thinking is that this better emotional state creates a more receptive physiological environment for the whole IVF process.
Makes sense.
And then there's a 2023 systematic review that showed really notable improvements in psychological well-being for infertile women getting acupuncture. It highlights its role specifically in managing the stress during fertility treatment.
And does the research hit that key hormone, cortisol, directly? The one we identified as the main villain here.
It does. There's research published in a major journal, Human Reproduction, that specifically showed acupuncture actively lowers circulating cortisol levels.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of the physiological smoking gun, you know? By bringing down that key stress hormone that's blocking fertility, it directly tackles the chemical hijack we talked about earlier.
This sounds really promising for IVF patients, definitely. But what about conception outside of assisted reproduction? Can acupuncture help on its own for people trying naturally?
The evidence suggests it has broader applications, yes. A large 2019 meta-analysis showed it was effective for infertile women not using assisted reproduction, particularly those who had issues with ovulation, like irregular cycles. It showed a clear benefit in regulating cycles and promoting ovulation in those cases.
Interesting.
And building on that, a 2021 study, this one in the Journal of Traditional Chinese Medical Sciences, reported that acupuncture actually boosted both pregnancy rates and ovulation rates. It also seemed to decrease miscarriage rates in women who had been diagnosed with infertility. So it suggests it's doing more than just making you feel better. It's having a tangible therapeutic effect on outcomes.
And I see a 2014 overview here in the International Journal of Women's Health that seems to kind of pull this all together, positioning acupuncture for general reproductive health.
Exactly. It highlighted its potential for improving menstrual regularity and just better stress management in the whole fertility picture. So when you look at all this accumulating evidence, it really positions acupuncture not as some fringe alternative, but as a scientifically validated complementary strategy in modern fertility care. And it works specifically because it targets and helps neutralize that chronic physiological stress response.
Okay, so for listeners who are hearing this, seeing the physiological argument, the data, and are thinking, okay, I'm interested in exploring this, where do they go? It sounds like you need someone who really gets the reproductive side of things, not just general acupuncture.
Oh, specialized knowledge is absolutely key here. You definitely want a practitioner who understands reproductive endocrinology and the nuances of fertility. The materials we reviewed specifically mention one resource, the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness in New York City. They're highlighted because apparently they were the very first acupuncture group in the U.S. to specialize only in treating fertility issues. They've been doing it for over 2 decades, supporting thousands of people, and really integrating that traditional knowledge with modern medical approaches.
That kind of focused, deep experience seems really important. So for anyone listening who wants to check that out, the details are www.berkeleycenter.com, or the phone number is 212-685-0985. It really comes back to that core idea. Empowering your fertility journey has to involve addressing stress, not just emotionally, but chemically. So we started this deep dive, seeing stress maybe as this vague roadblock. But the sources really laid out a clear physiological map, didn't they? We saw the blood flow redirection, the cortisol steal hijacking hormones, the disruption of those critical HPO and HPG communication axes. It all connects chronic pressure directly to challenges in conceiving. It's a full-body response, rooted in survival.
And understanding that mechanism, understanding how deeply physical it is, leads us to maybe a final thought for you to consider. We talked quite a bit about how fertility struggles themselves create more stress, feeding into that difficult cycle. So knowing now just how critical that hormonal balance and consistent blood flow are for success, what opportunities can you find outside of a doctor's office or an acupuncture clinic to proactively interrupt that stress cycle in your own daily life? That's maybe something to mull over until our next deep dive.